Oh, let me tilt down there. You can see me. Good morning, everybody. How are you? All right, I think you can see me there. Hopefully everybody's got their latte on. I've got my handy dandy cup of coffee, and I have my baristas wandering around the house to bring me more if I need some. Welcome. This would normally be a latte and learn session, but we're all homebound. So we'll just, we'll go through everything. It shouldn't take probably the full hour, but just wanted to make sure that we got this information still in front of you. So I'm Angie Baker. That was, you know, there's my face on the screen a couple of times. This session really is intended to go through some upcoming changes to the BLC. So you may have noticed, let me get over here to the correct screen. You may have noticed some changes here recently with, you know, our rebranding of the BLC. We have the new logo, we have the new mark that I call the bloop up there in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I might actually, my Zoom meeting might be over it, but you know, we've had this campaign running for a long time, talking about the power of the BLC, that it's all about your confidence and your connections and your community, that is this this greater picture of the BLC. And it's interesting right now, we're seeing this, you know, really play out in a unique kind of way. We're still open for business, doing things sort of that we normally would do, just in a different manner. So we'll see how this goes as we kind of go forward and work through the nuances of all of these changes that we're adapting to. But we are not slowing down. We are not, we're not delaying any of the work that we are doing. Incidentally, if you need anything, the help desk is still working as normal, just they're all, you know, on their computers at home. So please understand that we are still a resource for you. We're completely accessible to you. I'm still doing training classes as normal. It's just you log in and follow along. So, you know, I think that this campaign actually really speaks truth right now as we're in this interesting season that, you know, that as Nicole often is fond of saying, anybody can build a database, but what the BLC represents is bigger than that. We are this cooperative of agents working together to get things done and to serve our clients in the best way possible, and to continue doing that regardless of the circumstances. And of course, you rely on the data and the database to be able to gather information and act as a resource. But our industry is bigger than that. So to that end, there are some changes coming. And many of you I invited onto this class today because of the practice of you know, filing these exempt listings in our processes. We had a way for a listing that was not accessible to the public just yet, or if there was something else going on with it, you could file those listings as exempt in our system. And so I did a reach out to anyone who had in the last couple of years filed a listing as exempt, to make sure that we get this information in front of you and you're aware of the new process going forward. So on this slide, I just said, you know, this is a responsive process. This is something that we're putting in place in response to a new policy implementation by NAR. It's referred to as MLS 8.0 because of where that policy is written into the NAR rules and regulations. But we are really talking about it as the clear cooperation policy. And this states that within 1 business day of marketing a property to the public, a listing broker must submit the listing to the MLS for cooperation with other MLS participants, translation to the BLC. Public marketing includes but is not limited to flyers displayed in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites, brokerage website displays, including your IDX and your vows, digital communication marketing, including your email blasts, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks, and applications available to the general public. So this policy was adopted by NAR into their rules at their meetings in November, and they they have mandated that all MLSs nationwide implement and adopt this policy no later than May 1st. And I've been watching the boards, the conversation boards, and that date is not shifting. But it's okay because we were kind of ahead of the game anyway and prepared for a rule like this. So my hope is as we go through the details of how this is going to affect your day-to-day, that you'll find that it largely doesn't. That we've got other ways for you to manage your day-to-day business where this is not going to have a very big impact on you and your ability to service your clients. So let me put this into context for you, because I know that one business day kind of has scared a lot of people, not scared, but concerned a lot of people as far as how do I accomplish this? So here's what is changing. If you, for most of your listings, you're taking it as what we call a traditional listing, then that simply means that you are signing that listing agreement, and within 2 business days, 2 full business days, you need to submit that listing as an active listing in the BLC. It operates exactly the way that it always has. It's visible to everyone. It goes out in all the internet feeds. You can market it. Days on market start counting. There's nothing new here. We are not deviating from that 2 full business days. You still have that time for your traditional listings to get them in the system and do all of the things that you normally would do. So that clear cooperation rule in the 1 day is not applying to this traditional listing model. Scenario number 2 that we hear a lot, and increasingly so, is that the seller needs some prep time for whatever reason. Perhaps it's that the seller needs to do some repairs to their house to make it market ready, to put their best foot forward and get that listing on the market in its best possible condition. And they need a bit longer to accomplish that. Or the other scenario is that you have a marketing plan that you adhere to, and you're going to have maybe a staging consultation. Maybe you're going to have professional photographers come in and take photos. Maybe you're going to do a virtual tour and have somebody that does Matterport tours come in and put those together for you. And that's part of your marketing model. You can still do that. Either of those scenarios, that's fine. You can still do that. And you have 2 options for how to accomplish that. These exist today. There are no changes here, with the exception of one little control that I'll talk about. The system allows you to go ahead and submit a listing as active, and then I'll show you this on another screen, but where it says no showings until, you can have that for up to 7 days. Let me just flip over and I'll come back to this one. So at the top left corner of the screen here where it says available to showing, hopefully you guys are familiar with what this looks like, but where it says available for showing and I have no in there, then it asks for an available for showing date. As long as that date is within the next 7 days, then I can go ahead and submit that listing as active. It's not going to be included in the IDX like public internet feeds or in the syndication feeds until the day that it becomes available to show, but it will show up in those prospecting emails, the auto email searches that you have running for buyer clients. It shows up as an active listing. It of course will show up in any active searches that agents are doing, so they know about it and they can they can reach out and try to schedule something after that 7 days. So that's just the behavior of those, but you can still submit it as an active listing. Funny enough, I just this morning took a call asking for this exact thing. If I have a listing, the seller doesn't want to make showings available yet, but we can open it up in a week. You can go ahead and put it in as an active listing, as long as those showings are going to be available within 7 days of the list date. The other option, if it was going to be longer than 7 days, and this is another question we're fielding a lot here right now, is it's going to be longer than 7 days. It might be 10, it might be 14, it might be 30. Then you can go ahead and put the listing in the system. Available for showing is no, but then you can change that status to temporarily off market. Here's the benefit of putting that in as temporarily off market. Days on market does not count. It will hold at 1 day while it's in temporarily off market. And it makes sense if you just look at the names. Temporarily off market does not count days on market. So DOM only counts listings that are in that active status. Those temp off market listings, there is a search component, there's a status that you can search by in the BLC for temporarily off market. So you can still see them, they're visible to all members. Again, with it not available to show, it's not included in internet feeds until the date it's available to show, but marketing is permitted. So here's the difference. You can market it, you cannot show it. And that includes you, the listing agent, cannot show it to clients. You can't allow any other agents to show it, no matter how much they beg and plead and pull strings with you. It doesn't matter that we've been friends for 25 years. You cannot show it. Okay, so you can market it. You can call it coming soon. You can call it whatever it is that you want to, on the market, but not available. You can market it. You cannot show it. And that's really at the heart of this. Okay. Let me show you how that works, and then I'll talk about column number 3. If you were going to change a listing to temporarily off market, you would go through your normal process of putting the listing in the add edit section. And then when you save as incomplete or you submit that listing as not available to show, then on the left side of my screen here, it says modify listing. Here's the link to change to temp off market. So you can manually do this now. That also, of course, works for any listings that you currently have on the market and the sellers, for whatever reason, because life happens and apparently pandemics happen, and that seller may not want people walking through and visiting their home. You can take that listing and change it to temp off market to kind of ease that. But again, keep in mind, you can market it, you can't show it. Okay, and it's going to restrict it from any of those listing feeds. If it's an active listing that you're turning to temp off market, it's already gone out on all of those listing feeds, and now you're kind of changing the story. But for this purpose, if it's at the beginning of the listing and it's not going to be available for showing for a period of time, then you can change it to temp off market. When you click through that temp off market link, then this is the page you get. It's very, very simple. It says, here's the listing information. What's the temp off market date? I grabbed this screenshot obviously the other day. So the date I would put in that change to temp off market field is today's date. And the reason that's important is when I put in today's date, then it moves it to temp off market. And then what it's going to do is it's going to hold it in that temporarily off market status, stopping the days on market count. And it's going to count for 30 days. So a temp off market listing can stay in that holding status for up to 30 days. If it goes beyond 30 days, that's kind of not temporarily anymore. Temporary is meant to be that short-term holding period. So if it goes beyond 30 days, the system's automatically going to, on day 31, change that status to withdrawn. And that is how that currently works. And again, just the idea behind that is if it goes beyond 30 days, there's probably something else going on there. Perhaps when they pulled, they were going to replace all the carpet and they pulled the carpet up and oh my gosh, they have rot or mold or something like that, that's going to take them longer than expected to fix, then that might change it to, a withdrawn necessity. So you might want to, change the status anyway, and maybe get that contract in place as well. So if though the system changes it to withdrawn and you say, well, it took longer than we expected, but it's going to be on in the next couple of days, you can change it back to that temporarily off market status, or you can go from withdrawn to active, or whatever it is that you need to do in that particular circumstance. You have the freedom to be able to accomplish that. Okay, so let's move on to column number 3 here, this office exclusive or off BLC as we're sometimes referring to it. This is where that NAR policy really kicks in. So for these properties, we've typically collected these as those exempt listing disclosures. And that's going to change. So this is the piece that's really going to change. We're no longer going to be doing exempt listings. Instead, we're going to be using this terminology, office exclusive. It's a bit better descriptive of what what this is used for. So for an office exclusive listing, again, you still have 2 full business days to take from taking the listing to file it with the BLC. Currently with the exempt listings, you email those to us. That is still fine for a period of time. But I'll show you in the system how this will work going forward. When those are filed, we actually create in the system an incomplete listing with just the tax information loaded in and the agent information loaded in. So it's an incomplete listing. You can edit it. So if you wanted to put more information into it, you certainly could. But the idea behind this, since it's an incomplete listing, it's not been published, it's visible only to the broker, the agent, and then the MyBoard staff, so that we can keep track of those. It's not in any of the internet feeds because, again, not an active listing. So it doesn't get included in any of the vows, the IDX feeds, the syndication feeds. It doesn't go any of those places. And the reason for that is under this status, there is no marketing permitted. Okay. If marketing starts, then you must bring it to active. You need to publish it in the BLC within that 1 business day. And that's where that rule kicks in, is at the initial term, I am withholding it. I'm making it an office exclusive. But then if I begin marketing it, I've got to make it available to the rest of the BLC. The heart behind this is truly trying to ease some of that tension that's been created with the way we're collecting exempt listings currently, where you may have a buyer who drives by a property, sees a sign in the yard, asks you, their realtor, about that property, and you can't find it because it's in this exempt listing file that only MyBoard staff can see. And so you got to try to do some digging, and it makes you less the definitive source. Which is one of our goals at the BLC, is to make our members the definitive source of all listing information. So that's where there's been a tension that's been created through that process. And we're trying to make it a better system for logging where these listings are and making it a bit more transparent. So with the office exclusives, here's the rules behind that. You may not market to the public. But you may talk about it within the confines of your office and to your active clients. So if you're working with 16 buyers, and you think that they may be interested
on the phone. I'll talk to him. I'm sure he'll call me back and be like, "Yeah, I'm coming."
Then
ain't gonna work.
You can notify your active clients that you're working with about the property that you have listed, but you can't reach back, 20 years worth of client history and tell that entire client history about this property, because they would be considered the public. You don't have an ongoing client contractual relationship with them. So that's where the distinguishing is. And as far as office is concerned, that's defined by who is the managing broker of your office or offices. You could have a managing broker that manages more than 1 branch. And so these office exclusives could be presented to anyone under that managing broker's umbrella, that designated realtor. With office exclusives, if you do decide to bring it to market, okay, you start marketing it, then the days on market works just like they do with exempt listings currently. That days on market would look at the listing date and count the time from when that property was listed. So this is the branding. Now, I get a lot of questions. Why would someone do that? Why would someone take an office exclusive? Is there ever a case where someone would say, "Hey, I want to contract with a realtor to sell my house, but don't market it to the general public. I don't want the world to know about it. I just want you to use your connections, your contacts, and sell my house." So there's lots of different scenarios. I've heard many agents kind of chime in on this of why that might be necessary. Best example I heard and that I've been using in these trainings is there was a federal judge a couple of years ago that was involved in a very public and contentious case, had received some hate mail, some death threats, needed to sell his house, but didn't want it marketed to the general public, didn't want the world knowing that his house was on the market. So contracted with a realtor and said, use your network, figure out how to sell my house, but don't advertise it on the internet. That might be a case where you would want to have an office exclusive and just work within the confines of your office to find a buyer. Okay, and you'll have lots of other scenarios that come up, and you might be curious about, oh, how do I handle this the best way? Which bucket does my scenario fit into? So I'll walk you through a few of those. This policy is going into effect in the MIBOR BLC on April 14th. The system will be live with these changes. One thing that we are building is the ability for the system to recognize on this temporarily off market the difference in dates between 7 days and further out. And so once that control is created and in place, if you have a property that is not available to show and will not be available within that first 7 days that's going to be further out, then the system will automatically recognize that date. And when you submit the listing, it'll give you a warning message that says this property is not available to show within the time frame allowed. So it's going to automatically be changed to that temporarily off market status on your behalf. Okay, so it'll just take you over to that and you submit and it happens for you on your behalf. So we're building that out. That's the one piece that's not in place currently, but we do have people utilizing this option already. Even before we have said you have to, there are some people who have recognized, hey, this is a good option for me. So we're going to start putting our listings in, no showings until for, up to 7 days, and then manually changing it to temporarily off market because we haven't built in that piece that makes the system smart enough to recognize that date. Okay, so you can start using that now. As far as really monitoring this and enforcing it, we intend that there will be an education period for anyone who files one of these or isn't sure what to do within the allotted time frame. We're going to make sure that everyone's comfortable with it, understands all the nuances, the ins and outs of how to operate through this, and that's anticipated to go on until June, probably the beginning of June. So we'll make sure that everybody knows, is aware, has all the resources that they need before we start, levying any fines or violations on properly going through this process. Doesn't mean that's an open, that's an open invitation to intentionally violate it, but we just want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with this. Okay. So I showed you that screen, but here's some resources that you do have available to you. We have a dedicated web page that we've created for all things clear cooperation. It's just mybor.com/clearcooperation. And I'm going to actually take you over to that page now so you can see everything that's there. But you've got, tons and tons of resources available to you there. Let me just push this down and there we go. So here's the clear cooperation page. If you just go mybor.com/clearcooperation, then you'll see all of the different resources. There's a great video here from Shelly Specchio. If you're a managing broker for your office and you want to have this, share this out to your office members, if you want to, have this presented at your next office meeting, especially if it's remote, you can just hit the play message and play this for everybody as you're doing your office meetings. That might be a great, a great resource for you. As you go on down, there's also some documents. So here's a graphic that you can use, have things change, what is changing, and it explains all of those different parts and pieces. You can also, there's a listing status quick guide here that is really, really great. It's just a grid. If I have a traditional listing, if I have no showings until, off market, office exclusive or withdrawn, how do all of those operate within the framework of our system? So you can see that, when is public marketing allowed? Immediately, immediately, immediately. Oh, you can't do it here. Okay, and you can't do it here. So it walks you through all of those different scenarios so that you don't have to guess on how do I handle this situation versus that. You'll also see, some graphics that says, here's how those office exclusives work. Here's what public marketing is considered. You've also got a section of resources down here lower on the page where the new form is there for your use if you want to stop doing those exempt listings, but you do have a situation where there's a privacy or a security issue with the sellers, and they want you to list their property, but they don't want you to publish it to the world. You can go ahead and take the office exclusive listing on this new form, and it explains exactly how that works. There's some it's changed a bit, so there are some places for them to acknowledge that it's not going to be available to the public. It's not going to be viewable by other members of the BLC in this case. So there are things that you can, talk through, have that conversation with the clients, and they may decide, there's a better method. You can still do confidential listings. It doesn't happen often, but from time to time, we'll have someone ask, hey, can I still post a listing in the BLC as confidential? Underneath that, you've got that quick guide, and then there's some additional information regarding how this policy is going to be rolled out. Okay, so those are the resources that you have available. You can snag that. URL there and use it as you see fit. And then I do want to hop into Matrix just to show you how these, if you do have an office exclusive listing, how these will be handled moving forward. So before I get to that, let me answer, there was a question that came in. So a couple of questions. So what's defined as an office? It's not just your physical office location. It has to do with who is the designated realtor over that office. So it's not the brand or the franchise. So it depends on how your brand or your franchise is set up. It needs to be, that office exclusive is specific to the managing broker, that designated realtor that's in charge of your listing. So if you think about it in the context of taking a listing agreement, who is ultimately responsible for that listing contract, right? It's not the agent, it's the managing broker over that branch or that multiple branches. So if you think of it in that context, that helps you understand who you may share it with. It's anyone who would fall under that umbrella of being able to manage through that listing. I hope that helps. And then another question that came in was, as of April 14th, what happens to properties that are under the exemption form currently? You get to choose. We are not going to do anything with them. We're just going to let them sit as they are. But that actually helps me segue into what this looks like going forward. So I'm just going to hop in here. I have a listing I created in a class yesterday, so I'll just use it as my example. When I put a listing in the system, currently you see all of these tabs at the top. What we will add for you, I can see it now, but it's restricted to the general membership. There will be this form called the Office Exclusive Listing. So this is currently how my board staff creates those exempt listings that are filed. So we'll hop in here. Obviously, we haven't changed the language in here yet. I didn't get that taken care of before the call today. But these will all be updated to the language of Office Exclusive. So it's just the same form that you fill out on paper. Please be aware that if you are marketing the property, and this exists with the exempt, and it will continue to be the same, that same violation under the office exclusives, as far as I know right now, that things may change, but if you are marketing an office exclusive, in violation of the rule, then you could be subject to a $500 fine for that. So it's important to make sure you know how this operates. Currently with exemptions, if you are marketing or you're posting information about a property that you have and you have not put it in the BLC under any of these other categories or statuses, and you have not filed the exempt listing by emailing it to the BLC, then that is subject to a $500 fine. So, so you need to make sure you're filing these properly to avoid having any of those penalties levied. We really don't like to have to fine anyone for anything, but it's the way that we keep our processes and our data very, very clean. So the form will be very, very similar when the office exclusive rule goes into effect. And at the bottom, it'll say office exclusive, and you would say yes. And then the contract date, the listing date, contract date. And I would put that in there. And then when does the contract expire? So I'm gonna say my contract expires April 30th because it was easy to get to in the calendar. And then when I when I save that listing as incomplete, then that is logged as an exempt listing. The second piece of this is you would actually go in here and add supplements to file those documents. We ask you to submit the listing agreement and that form, the office exclusive, currently exempt, but we ask you to file those forms. So I would just go out to my computer just like I would on a listing, put in the seller's disclosure or the lead-based paint disclosure, utilities, any of those supplements that you normally would upload. In this case, I would upload my listing contract and my office exclusive form. And then in the drop-down menu here where it says supplement type, this is very important. Currently, the form is way down at the bottom. It says limited exempt listing disclosure. Okay, limited means the only people who can see that supplement are the listing agent, the managing broker, and the MyBoard staff, and it will never, ever, ever be exposed to anyone else. That's what that limited means on that supplement type. Okay, so your listing agreement will never, ever, ever be displayed to any other member. Even if this listing goes live and that supplement is still there, no one else will be able to see it. So that's what that supplement type is. The very last one in the list after your agent only and then after your public facing supplements. At the very, very bottom, it says limited. So that's really critical that you do that. That's how we can have the system check and just make sure that it was filed correctly and that the supplements are attached. If you miss that piece of it, again, there's an education period that we'll be working through to make sure that the process is filed. My expectation going forward is that these office exclusives should be very rare. It's going to be really difficult to service your clients properly if you say, I'm going to take your listing, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it outside of my office. That might, you have to judge whether that's in the best interest of your client. So it's there. That's how the process will work. We'll continue doing training and education to make sure that you have that down. I'm recording this session, so I'll post this and have it available to you guys as well, so that if you need a reminder, you need a refresher, you can walk through this part of the process. Again, the terminology will change as we get closer to that rollout, but the format will all remain the same. So that's how you can submit an office exclusive. Okay. The other piece, just to make you aware of, is if I go into this listing and I say I want to make it temporarily off market, just to walk you through these forms. So this says when I have this listing and I want to mark it temporarily off market, I'm just going to put today's date in there. It doesn't ask me for when I expect it to be, active or withdrawn or whatever. It's just going to start that count so it can sit in that temporarily off market status for up to 30 days. Okay. And again, the piece that we're building that will be there once April 14th rolls around is in this available for showing date field. If I say no, and it's within the 7 days from my list date, then it's just going to go ahead and put it in as an active listing, and it's not going to do anything strange. If it's further than, let's say it's going to be ready April 14th, if it's further away than 7 days, then at the time that I go in here to submit the listing, it's going to give me a warning message on the next page that says, because of these time frames, your listing is going to automatically be put in as a temporarily off market. So Natalie asked, exempt listing disclosure, should it be changed? Yeah, we'll rename it. We'll rename it. It'll be in the same place. So it'll be renamed to align with the form that's expected as of that period of time. And then what happens to properties that are under the current BLC exemption? We're not going to do anything with them. We're just going to let them sit there until they expire, because all those listings will at some point expire. The way that they're in there now, and I can't show you the individual listings because they are marked as exempt. So I don't want to violate anybody's agreements or privacy on that. But you can see I have all incomplete listings here. This is what my board staff sees, is all the incomplete listings, including those that are just being worked on by admins. But we've got a special field there that says exempt, yes or no. So that's how we track all of those. If you have any of those, you should see them in your add edit section. In your quick modify, you would see those as an incomplete listing. And if you decide, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put those as temporarily off market instead of exempt, you can do that. You can manage through them however you'd like to currently. So it's entirely up to you. We file those so that we can keep track of what has been sent to us. So we're not trying to dig around in a bunch of emails to try to figure that out. So you have complete control over those. Keep in mind, if you file an exempt listing under the current rules and you decide to make it an active listing, once you hit that active, once you hit submit listing, that days on market is going to look at the list date and count from there. So if I had an exempt listing that I filed on March 1st and I go ahead and make it active today, it's going to come on the market with 20 days on market. So if you need to, go ahead and push that to market, you can get an addendum to your listing contract for that list date and set those expectations with your client, let them know exactly what's happening, and change that list date prior to submitting it. But if you submit the listing and then go, oh shoot, I didn't mean for it to have 20 days on market, and then you go get an addendum and you ask us to change it, we can't. That's one of those you kind of can't unring the bell, is a lot of times how we say it. You can't go back in time to change the list date if that's not what aligns with the contracts. So that's sort of the line that we're following, and making sure that we adhere to the contracts in place. We're not going to mess with anybody's listing contracts. We don't mess with contracts. So hopefully that clears up some of how the clear cooperation policy affects the way that we manage through posting listings, and clears up some confusion about how that 1 day rule is going to impact our business. Our business rules that state you have 2 full business days to submit a listing in the BLC is still our standard, and that has been approved and vetted through NAR, and they are okay with us doing that. The 1 business day rule that says if you have withheld a listing as an office exclusive and then you decide to market it, you have 1 full business day to get it in the system. So that, again, is just going to ease some of that tension with these hidden, I call it our little dark corner of hidden database. That's where this incomplete listings falls, that no one else can see. This is just going to open up that transparency, because now if your buyer clients ask you about a listing that they have seen somewhere, they've seen it on Facebook, or they've seen it, the sign in the yard as they're driving around, they're going to ask you about it, and now you can be able to find it. Instead of having to search and search and search and then finally get frustrated and call us to see if we have it on file as an exempt, you will be able to find them. So to find them, you can do it a couple of different ways. You'll see in the search on the BLC home screen, within the status list is temporarily off market. So if somebody gives me an address, let's just say it's 123 Main Street. All right, real creative today. But 123 Main Street, they drove by, they saw a sign in the yard, or they saw it posted on Facebook as coming soon, or we're getting ready to put this house on the market. I can type in 123 Main Street, and if it is temporarily off market or withdrawn or active, but there's no showings, whatever it might be, if I just leave that status section completely empty, I have no preference, then I can look for that address and I can find it. Okay. The exception would be if it's within that 2 full business days. If they list it today, today is a Friday, and then they would technically have until Tuesday to get that listing posted in the system. So 2 full business days. So if it's within that time frame, then of course you're not going to be able to see it right away. But our 2 full business days will help, again, kind of ease that tension, help you be able to find things easier. The other way that you can find it is in all of your searches, you have this status right here, temporarily off market. It's always been there. You don't pay a whole lot of attention to Tom. He just kind of gets ignored all the time. But you have had that status available to you since we've had Matrix in place. It's always been there. It hasn't gotten a lot of usage, but my prediction is that we will see an increase in these temporarily off markets. We'll see a decrease in the office exclusives, and that way it opens up that transparency where you are able to find it. Now, it is up to you whether you want to include those temp off market statuses in your searches that you create for your clients. It's up to you. If you're going to be searching active listings and sending those to your buyer clients, if you want to educate them on what temporarily off market means, then there's nothing that prohibits you from searching those and providing those as well. It's something that you're going to need to work through, look at, and decide if that's in the best interest. It does, if there is a property in temp off market, let's see if I can find any. I'll just take actives off, and let's see how many there are. 109, so not highly utilized right now, but let me show you what these mean. If there is a property in that temp off market status where you're used to seeing the active status, here you see TOM, and it's in bright magenta pink. You can't miss it, temp off market. When that listing is provided to your client via the client portal, that status carries right over there as well. So if you want to send them, then I would just encourage you to really talk to your clients and say, I'm going to send these to you. What it means is one of 2 things. Either it's been temporarily taken off the market because life has happened, they're addressing something, or it's getting ready to come to market, but it's not available for me to walk you into that property at this time. Okay, so we're just gonna have to hold off. And as soon as it changes to active, it'll be included in that auto email feed. So they'll get a new, remember that the status changes are one of the triggers for those auto email refreshes. So it would be sent via the auto email that says active, and it would refresh to active on that client portal page so that they can see what the change was. It's gone from temp off market to now it's active. And there's nothing that prohibits you from reaching out to that client and saying, or to that agent and saying, hey, I see that this property is temp off market. What's the deal? When can I get in there? Is it okay if you write my name down as soon as it's available, I want to get in there and show it. So it's up to you to kind of vet through that process and what you're going to coach your clients through. But there's some ideas to kind of get you started. There's not a ton of them out there right now, but I promise you we're going to see an increase in these. All right, what questions do you guys have for me? So Annette asked, will this information be sent to managing brokers? Of course it will, and already has been. So you should have some messages in your inbox from our communications team, MyBoard Communications, that walks through all of this, has the link to the page for Clear Cooperation. I am happy to follow up this call with an email to all of you with the slides that I include. I don't know how useful my slides are to you guys, but certainly with the Clear Cooperation page, I can send you that link. And I will, I'm recording this session, so I'll edit it down and then I'll post this as well for you guys. I'm trying to edit all of the trainings that I do to take out references to the current coronavirus situation, because that will change. Obviously, hopefully it will change. We'll all be let free at some point. So I want to make sure that these trainings kind of are good for the long term. So that's why I'm editing things, not to hide anything or take anything out, just to make sure that they're useful for the long term. And so I'll make sure that those links are posted for you so that you can get to them easily and use these as a reference. If you'd like to share any of this information amongst your office, of course, we encourage you to do so. So here's another question for now. When inputting a new listing that I want to be temp off market, I choose not available for showing. Yeah, so I think, and my system works a little bit differently from yours. I can test it out. I don't think you can take it directly from incomplete to temp off market. I can, but my access is a bit different from yours. I think what you'll need to do is when you're inputting it, you're gonna have to, for now, until April 14th, I never encourage falsifying anything in the BLC, but for now I'm gonna allow you to. When you are putting your listing in, down here at the bottom where it says available for show no, you're gonna have to pick a date that's within 7 days. So, I mean, you can just put it as tomorrow. It's not gonna do anything to your listing. It's not gonna change it, do anything to it when it hits that date. So you can go ahead and put the listing or put the available for show date within a 7-day time frame, hit OK, submit the listing. Whoops, there it is. Submit the listing, the dark blue one that's highlighted. When you submit that listing, I'm not going to submit this one because this is my house and I'm not going to sell my house. So submit the listing. It'll immediately take you to that this has been submitted. Go ahead into add edit, pick that listing, and then change it to temp off market. Do it really, really quickly to try to catch it from hitting any active listing searches that it might show up in that 30 seconds that it takes you to switch over to this. That's just for the interim until we get that control built in that'll do it automatically for you. But if you want to do this right now, just do it real quick. Once you submit, come over here, temp off market date is today. I'm good. Now when I submit, it's submitted in there as temp off market. And if the timing is just the stars have aligned and the timing is that it gets caught in somebody's active listing search, when they go to view that listing, it's going to say it's temp off market. So it's really not going to break anything or hurt anything. You just don't want too much of a lag there because our system checks every 5 to 10 minutes for new listings and queues those up. So that's the gap right now that exists for those that aren't going to be staying active, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Okay, good. Cool. We got it. What other questions do you guys have for me? We still have like 12 minutes. Anything else? If you think of anything later or you're going through a scenario or you have something weird that happens, please reach out to our help desk. I'll just pop them up here in the help section in Matrix. You have this contact MyBor. Contact our help desk. You can email them, say, here's oddball situation that I have. How would I put this in the system? They will help you. If you need to, you can of course call too, but they're monitoring their emails really carefully so that they can make sure and respond to those quickly without delay. If someone posts a house and says, I will be listing a house in the next few days, but doesn't give any details, is this okay? Jill, why are you trying to cause trouble here? It depends. So here's the danger of that. And you've heard me say this before. In your listing agreements, and shoot, I should have brought one up. It'll take me a few minutes to log into Zip Form, so I'm not going to peel over there, but you guys are all familiar with your listing agreements. In, I think it's line 11 or 12, it says this listing will begin on a specific date, and then everybody signs everything and you're good to go. If you are dating that date to begin on in the future, then that date is the date that our rules kick in. You do not have a listing agreement until that date. The concern I have for that practice is it leaves a gap in your contractual obligations. And I am not an attorney. I'm disclosing right now, I'm not an attorney. This shouldn't be construed as legal advice, but you put yourself at some risk there if you are dating a contract in the future and beginning advertising it prior to that contract being effective. We've heard this story a couple of times that that somebody dates it. Let's say that I've been in conversation with the clients. They're not going to be ready to list their house until April 1st. I'm just going to make the math simple. So they're not going to be ready to list with me until April 1st. But I can go ahead and let people know about it, with permission from the seller. We're not under contract. We are not obligated by a contract until that date arrives. So if you're advertising it, you have your sign in the yard, you have all of that stuff going, check license law for one, to make sure that you're following all of the rules of the law. But if somebody sees that house, advertised and approaches the homeowner directly, or, a buyer's agent comes and approaches the homeowner directly, I hope that's not happening. That listing agent may be unprotected during that period of time prior to that listing agreement beginning. So again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, but that is the risk I have heard. One of the stories that I heard directly from someone on one of our committees was that 30 days prior to listing a property, they've been in conversation with the homeowners and said, oh yeah, you've got a lot of work to do before we should get your house on the market. So I'll help you coordinate contractors. I'll help you, get everything together. I've got, 3 or 4 recommendations for you to have roofing work done or interior work done. A neighbor saw the construction trucks coming and going from the neighbor's house and approached them outside one day and just said, hey, it looks like you're having a lot of work done. And that conversation starts and says, oh yeah, well, we're getting ready to put our house on the market. Well, I got a friend, right? Friend of a friend who's interested. Then that listing agent was kind of cut out of that transaction, even though he'd actually spent some money and had some skin in the game on this, but didn't have a listing contract in place. If you don't have the property listed, if you have no contractual relationship with the homeowners, then license law says you are not allowed to advertise that property. So that's the other piece of it. If you don't have any contract whatsoever, and I'm just reading my questions here. What about post pics of the house but doesn't give any details, no address? So yeah, if you are doing that, if you are going about that practice, then yes, you are operating outside of license law. So Jill, what you might do if you see that occurring is you can file a complaint. I mean, you could file a complaint with our professional standards department. They'll do some education on that for them. License law issues are all handled through the Attorney General's office. If I'm not mistaken, Dee, let me know if I speak out of turn here. But those are the concerns. So yeah, don't do that. Bottom line is don't do that. Utilize this resource, myboard.com/clear-cooperation. I bet you anything that that maybe didn't get clarified by me is a resource in this page that you can leverage and again, share out as much as you would like to. And watch your emails. MyBoard will still be communicating through the Industry Insider on Fridays for managing brokers and the Realtor Weekly on Mondays for everyone. And we'll have updates on any of the current states of affairs that we need to keep our members apprised of. You can also watch MyBoard's Facebook page. And you can also use the Ask MyBoard Facebook page if you have little questions. We monitor that all the time. So if you have a question, you can post it there. You can email us, you can call us. Whatever you need to do is perfectly fine. We are still running. We are still here. We're still a resource for you. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything at all. We're going to wrap up. I hope you all stay healthy, stay safe, stay busy with your business. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care, guys. Bye.